Herman.
That's okay, Melissa.
Drum roll, please. Bonzo, what's up?
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
If everyone would please find their seats.
You too, John.
I hear a door slamming.
Thank you. I'll just not forget to turn it back on.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, February 20th, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise, an invocation on behalf of Commissioner Herman Robinson.
We gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills, judgment, in keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. And I can't not bow my head for our national leaders that need to take responsibility for the arms race that our civilized country is participating in, and hope that they can minimize the death and destruction to our whole civilized nation. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to start with the additions, deletions, and reordering, and I see that we have one that has been consent, is to delete consent agenda item G, resolution number 13-2018, and add item I, resolution 15-2018, in support of the Village of Palm Springs CRA request.
So moved. Seconded.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to our presentation. And Ms. Bethany Cohen, please come up. This is our proclamation declaring February 24th through March 4th, 2018 as Eating Disorders Awareness Week. Enjoy it. That's okay.
Of course.
Whereas in the United States, as many as 30 million Americans are currently battling eating disorders, and more than 600,000 individuals in the state of Florida suffer daily with an eating disorder. And whereas eating disorders are associated with serious physical health consequences, including irregular heartbeats, heart disease and heart failure, kidney failure, osteoporosis, gastric rupture, tooth decay, obesity, gallbladder disease, diabetes, and death. And whereas anorexia nervosa has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. And whereas eating disorders know no boundaries with respect to gender, race, age, or economic status. And whereas the Alliance for Eating Disorders Awareness is a nonprofit organization established in 2000 in Palm Beach County to provide programs and activities aimed at outreach, education, early intervention, and advocacy of all eating disorders. And whereas the Alliance has worked tirelessly to educate and raise awareness of eating disorders, promote positive body image free from weight preoccupation and size prejudice, and prevent eating disorders. And whereas the Alliance offers educational presentations, cutting-edge information, and referrals for treatment, training, advocacy, support, and mentoring services, and low-cost treatment services for those who are underinsured or uninsured. Whereas the Alliance for Eating Disorders Awareness has offered presentations on eating disorders, positive body image and self-esteem to over 290,000 individuals throughout Palm Beach County and nationwide. And whereas recovery from these disorders is possible, an individual should not have to suffer or recover alone. Now, therefore, I, Pam Triolo, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim February 26th to March 4th, 2018 as Eating Disorders Awareness Week.
I just wanted to say thank you to the mayor and the city of Lake Worth for bringing awareness to this, to our community, and to ensure that we don't lose 23 people a day to this insidious disease. So thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6, Commission Liaison Reports and Comments. Vice Mayor Pro Tem, you're up.
Me first? First of all, we have the Historic Society of Lake Worth presents Lake Worth Then and Now, a visual trip with John Schneider, a renowned documentary filmmaker, and Dr. Ginger Peterson, Palm Beach County's historian author, 7 p.m. February 28th at Surrey's Tapa downtown. John's going to talk about the taste of Lake Worth. We also have the big street painting festival this weekend. I was in DC last week with the National League of Cities, working on and talking about the up and coming census, the 2020 census, and how important that is to our communities. And then also opportunity zones. You'll be able to hear a little bit more about that under the president's new tax bills. There's a something called opportunity zones. We've sent a letter to Tallahassee, to the governor, and we'll be working on that, trying to see what value that brings to the residents of the city of Lake Worth. And then last but not least, a big congratulations to the Vice Mayor, Scott Maxwell. He was appointed the Vice Chair for the National League of Cities Small Cities Council. So congratulations.
Commissioner Robinson?
Mentioned the Historic Society. The Historic Preservation Board is having a guideline meeting, workshop tomorrow night, 6 o'clock here. We're also, again, asking for volunteers to participate on the Recreation Board. And at some point, I know we can't regulate commerce in the city to the extent that I would like to eliminate AR-15s. I would just want to maybe correspond with the Scottish Rights people to ask their vendors to limit their gun sales to other than automatic and weapons of war. I think it's important that at this time we do not do nothing, and I think that's the only one of the few things that we can do very locally to limit the weapons that are killing people. That's my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. Some things have happened since we last met. Festival of Trees was great for the time that I was there. Unfortunately, I had a family matter that I had to attend to, so I did not get to hear Elizabeth Plater-Zyberg speak, but if you did, I think you were very lucky, most likely. I went to Vernon Heights Neighborhood Association again to hear from residents there about our comprehensive plan. And in addition to that, I, as a member of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, went up to Stewart for our monthly meeting, and there were a few things of note there, namely two. The first thing was that we received a presentation from Bob Solari, who is a member of the Constitution Revision Commission. You know, the state of Florida is very unique in that we are one of the only states in the country that has 5 different ways to amend our Constitution. And so every 20 years, a commission is put together. Bob Solari is on that commission, and he was telling us about basically some potential changes to the Constitution that people may have an opportunity to vote on. As a result of this, Proposition 95, I think we're all familiar with, which is pretty much anti-home rule. It basically takes out of the hands of every city the ability to regulate commerce that occurs across, municipal lines. You can read that so as to say that basically cities shouldn't do anything other than cut ribbons at buildings. And so that is highly problematic if you think local elections matter. You know, to me, Proposition 95 would basically result in the nullification of every single local election. You know, we might as well not even sit on this dais if Proposition 95 goes through. So just, be aware about that. It's technically dead. The chair of the committee can bring it back on his own accord for a vote for the full committee. So just, be aware about that. Be aware about what's happening up there. And the other thing was we received an interesting presentation about Lake Park's neighborhood revitalization plan. And, why would I talk about Lake Park? Basically because they're a city kind of similar to us. They are geographically very compact. They have a large inventory of historic homes. They've dealt with some of the same issues that we've dealt with. And some of the things in that presentation that I learned that they're doing, I think we can certainly try to emulate here. There's a special program that FP&L has with them, helping folks upgrade their homes to conserve energy so they can save on their bills. There's also a package, and I understand that we have obviously blight in the city, but there's a deal that they worked out with PNC Bank to where, if you buy a home, you can get financing not just for the purchase price, but for the full build out. So that there's no uncertainty about that, and it certainly helped them rehab, a lot of their properties. And so I asked the staff at Treasure Coast to get us that information as soon as possible, so we'll be able to get that information and see, what sorts of policies that we can implement here, like what Lake Park is doing, that could certainly help our residents. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I'm not going to be as chatty as everybody else this evening, but I do want to remind everybody that this weekend we'll have our annual street painting festival. And I understand there's still opportunities for those of you who don't have anything to do this weekend to volunteer your services. So it's a really good time. We'll have over 100,000 people coming into our city and enjoying the great artwork that will be displayed on our streets. So I encourage you to come out to that. And Madam Mayor, did we talk the last time, had the appropriations request in Tallahassee already been done last time we were here?
Oh, man, you're going to take that. I was going to mention that. No,
oh, good. Then I'll take it. As you may know, we, for the last several years, have had an appropriations request in Tallahassee for some infrastructure work to be done in the Park of Commerce, more specifically Boutwell Road. Unfortunately, the governor has vetoed each of the last 3 years our request. This year, we went back to Tallahassee again, and unfortunately, we didn't have a senator to represent us. So we had to kind of figure out how we were going to get something like this, onto the budget for the state's fiscal year. So the mayor and myself spent some time up there. Commissioner Amoroso spent some time up there, and basically stalking the halls of Tallahassee, trying to find somebody that would listen to us and be compassionate and lend us a hand. So we were finally able, as of a week or so ago, to get Senator Simpson to take up the bill and make sure that it makes it into the budget. So cross our fingers and hope that it in fact does remain in the budget. And I think there's a very good chance this year that appropriations will make it through. So I'm very pleased about that. And I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Amoroso for their efforts in Tallahassee. And we'll just keep after it. Thanks.
And thank you, Vice Mayor and Vice Mayor Pro Tem. I'll tell you, it takes a village, as you like to say all the time. But boy, were we not up and down the halls of Tallahassee. It was crazy. Just trying to find representative. I want to thank Senator Simpson and his office for helping us to make that possible and getting that onto the floor of the Senate and getting it through. Couple of things. Well, lots of things have been happening. Well, let's see. We went through since last we talked. Garlic Fest. That was stinky. Just kidding. Punny. Sorry. I couldn't resist. So I was actually a judge for the Garlic Fest competition. So that was real interesting. And actually, the chef who won was from Okeechobee Steakhouse, but he happens to live right here in the city of Lake Worth. So that was a good day. Yay. I want to thank everyone from the Festival of Trees. Of course, I always read the proclamation there. We had a wonderful event. I picked up an amazing begonia and got to meet a lot of people. So thank you all for coming. The firefighters had their chili cook-off in Bryant Park. We had a beautiful potluck at Integrity Palm Beach at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. I was honored to be a speaker at the Greater Lantana Chamber of Commerce luncheon that happened on the 8th. And thank you to everyone that came out or maybe went online to check out our city's State of the City. I want to thank my fellow commissioners. It was the first time ever since I've been here that I had all my commissioners up there on the dais with me, and I was really honored to have that. So thank you all so much for your support. It means a lot when we all come together. All right, I'll move on to public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. For everybody, I see a lot of new faces in here. This is your chance to talk on anything that is not on the agenda. So, anything that's going on in your neighborhood, but again, anything that's not an item on the agenda or is on the consent agenda. And we have one card in, I see, and that's from John Faust, the NAPC chair.
Yay.
Oh, yay.
Good evening, John Faust, 410 South M Street. I'm the chair once again, I'm the chair of the NAPC, the Neighborhood Association's President's Council, and I wanted to invite and encourage everyone to come out this Friday night for our Great Taste of Lake Worth. As you may or may not know, the street painting event that we have Saturday and Sunday, the roads are closed Friday morning early, and because of no street access for vehicles, the downtown sometimes suffers, the restaurants and the shopping and the events. So we've done this before, and we're looking forward. We have about 50% more participants this year than the last time we did this. We always sell out on this event. So the Great Taste, the tickets are $25. The tickets are available at Paul's on the Avenue, the Studio 205, and a couple of the presidents in some of the neighborhoods are holding some tickets. They'll also be available at the time of the event, which is Friday 6 to 10. We'll start off in front of the Cultural Council building on Lake Avenue. You should enjoy some great tastes of food, some great drinks, and also some trinkets. There'll be a couple non-restaurant participants this year, which will be fun. What am I missing? Anything? All right, thank you so much.
Ticket price?
25.
160.
Are there any other cards?
That's it, Madam Mayor.
And 100% of the funds go to the neighborhood association that goes back into your neighborhoods.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Amoroso. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 10, public hearings. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance for me? This is the second reading of adopting the Florida building codes. We went through the presentation on the first time. So second reading, City Attorney.
Ordinance number 2018-03 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 9 Buildings and Structural Regulations, Article 1 in general, Section 9-2 Building Code adopted by adopting the 2017 Building Code. Amending Section 9-2.1 City of Lake Worth Administrative Amendments to the Florida Building Codes adopted by adopting by reference the City of Lake Worth Administrative Amendments to the Florida Building Code 2017 edition, providing for severability, the repeal of laws in conflict, codification, and an effective date.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. Moved by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries now. Oh, I'm sorry. Do
No,
we
this
have
is next.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to also state for the record, we had no public comment cards or questions for that item. Thank you. Moving on to item 10B, ordinance number 2018-4. City Attorney, this is a first reading. Would you please read the ordinance?
Yes, Madam Mayor, ordinance number 2018-04 of the City Commission of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, extending the moratorium on the acceptance and processing of applications, the issuance of zoning confirmation letters, business licenses, development orders, and permits, and any other approvals involving uses related to medical marijuana as defined herein, for a period of 6 months to be extended if necessary, providing for legislative findings, intent, definitions, early termination, directions to staff, and for such other purposes, and providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, we have a public comment card. Renata Espinosa. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity for me to talk about this ordinance 2018-4 for your first reading. I want you to take into consideration about what you're about to do. I want you to talk to the business people about what's going on with the marijuana pharmacy, dispensary pharmacy, and where it's going to be the location, especially if it's anywhere that they're going to want to open near a school. The first, as you know, is everything's about the safety of the children. And sometimes people do things unpredictable. And as things been going on in this world, we are very concerned. I have my parents who are supporting me, and we want to make sure that you take in consideration, talk to the public, talk to the people, especially your constituents, everybody that's in Lake Worth, anything that's going to be affected with the business, and making sure if this is going to be happening, that it's not near a school at all. So please take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
I just want to respond to one thing, and actually, City Attorney, I think you can probably help us out here.
Okay.
This is a moratorium on not letting any additional dispensaries open within the city of Lake Worth. And I want the city attorney to read what was presented to us that was passed on to us from the state in regards to dispensaries prior to the moratorium. That can help maybe shed some light on it.
Okay. So the city has adopted a moratorium which prohibits the opening of any dispensaries in the city. There are 2 that opened before that moratorium was enacted, before the state law was passed, and this extends that moratorium. So there can be no dispensaries opened in the city until at least 6 months from now, actually 7 months from now, and then it'll come back before the commission. So at this point, this will continue the prohibition in the city of any additional moratoriums or any additional dispensaries opening.
And what is the classification, city attorney, on what was passed down to us from the state in regards to how and which these dispensaries?
If once this moratorium ends, every city has a choice, and the choice is either to completely prohibit or to allow, just as you would allow any pharmacy like a CVS or Walgreens. So you can't have any stricter regulations than the state law provides, both in terms of distance from schools or location, similar to pharmacies. So that will be the choice that the commission does not have to make tonight, but you might have to make 7 or 8 months down the line, that if you end the moratorium, you then choose either to allow them, as you would other pharmacies, or to prohibit them completely, other than the 2 that are already in town.
Commissioner Amoroso?
And I just want to be very clear that this moratorium stops any additional medical marijuana coming to the city of Lake Worth at the moment. And I know myself and Commissioner Hardy have said it before, but we'll say it again. This is where home rule comes into effect. Tallahassee has stopped the city of Lake Worth and other municipalities from making the best decisions on behalf of our residents. And for instance, the attorney brought it up, but I'll say it a little clearer. Tallahassee has said you either allow them or you don't allow them. So because we have 2 that have come in prior, Tallahassee is saying you either allow them or you don't allow them. That's why we have a moratorium right now, because I feel, and we've set it up here before, that 2 is enough. Some people might argue 2 is too many. But right now, we have 2, but Tallahassee says because we have 2, once the moratorium is lifted, it's a free-for-all. I personally don't agree with that, so we've been lobbying Tallahassee to make some changes to allow cities to work and for us to make those decisions. 2 in 7 square miles, to me, is plenty. They also offer home delivery all over South Florida, so the voters' vote is not suppressed, and anyone that actually needs help can get help. But I know myself, Commissioner Hardy, Vice Mayor Maxwell, the mayor, we've been in Tallahassee lobbying, and you were there, yes. We've all been there, lobbying for Tallahassee to stop the attack on home rule and allow the cities to work.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, I'll just echo basically everything that Andy said. We have very little say at all about this. It's basically, Tallahassee has tied our hands yet again. They don't really respect the idea that people in, cities and in counties, they don't really accept the idea that these people should be able to determine for themselves what their counties and what their cities should look like. So, here we are. And 2 people got in their applications really quickly before we enacted the moratorium. They must be allowed to go through. And that just, that is the law of the land. Our hands are tied at this point. As far as what we do going forward, we can't regulate them any differently than we would a pharmacy. So, if you wouldn't want a Publix near your school, then fine, right? Because, Publix has a pharmacy. So, maybe we should zone Publix out, or maybe we should zone Walgreens out, or maybe we should zone CVS out. That's basically the choice that we're left with. Either we zone every pharmacy out, or we allow medical marijuana in. That's not our fault. Those are the people that you vote for to go up on the state legislature. Those are the people who you're going to be voting for in November. And this November, you will have an opportunity to affect this debate. So if you care about it, here is not the place to be. Get on I-95, go west, go to Tallahassee, and talk to your state legislators up there. The state legislative session is happening right now. Those are the people who you need to talk to. And in November, when there's a gubernatorial election, when there's an attorney general election, that needs to be your number one issue. But here, there's really nothing that we can do because Tallahassee has made it that way by their fiat, not ours. And, of course, remote government is irresponsible government. And you're seeing that here today. The other thing is, I will try not to pick a fight here. But, what I'll say is that, 76% of the folks in Lake Worth voted for this. Okay, that means that there is a more than a supermajority of individuals who feel like marijuana, particularly medical marijuana, is not some menace to society, that it's something that people who have terminal illnesses, it's something that, that children who have seizures on a regular basis absolutely need to access to improve their quality of life. And so, when people make comments that say that medical marijuana, which by the way is not even smokable in the state of Florida, okay, you have to take some sort of a concentrated dose. You literally are not allowed to sell the stuff that's smokable. That medical marijuana somehow endangers children who are at a school that's screened in. By the way, the place up on Dixie Highway, they have security, they have cameras. You can't get in there without an ID card, right? And so, like the idea that we're endangering children, by the way, we're not doing anything. Someone set up a business. The idea that children are somehow endangered by people going to access medication that 76% of the citizens in this city said that people have a right to access bothers me a great deal. And, I had a professor in college, his pet peeve was tardiness. And, the reason why his pet peeve was tardiness, he said, if you come in late, you're going to disrupt my class. So every time a student came late, the professor would stop and rant and rave and expound about how lateness disrupts the class. It wasn't the student that disrupted his class. It was the professor disrupting his own class because the student came late and he chose to respond in that manner. And so, my thing is there would probably be a lot fewer students in a particular school on Dixie Highway that would be less conscious of medical marijuana nearby if different choices were being made. And so, there's a way to play this to preserve the safety and the innocence of the children at these schools that allows you to let your voice be heard to those of us who make policy here and to those who make policy in Tallahassee, that does not involve this public campaign where you rope children in to a decision that has nothing to do really with the city of Lake Worth. And so, I would just, ask folks to maybe take a different approach to this issue. That's all.
Any more public comment cards? Seeing there are none, we've got a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. Is that correct? Deb?
I'm sorry. I apologize. It was motioned by Hardy and seconded by Commissioner Amoroso.
That was close. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the ordinance number 2018-5. This is a second reading. This is the approval of the amendment to the city's pension plan, and this provides an extension of one-time option for specified employees. I think I described it the first time around and what that was. City Attorney, though, you do need to read the ordinance, please.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2018-05 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 16, Pensions and Retirement, Article 2, Employees Retirement System, Section 16-26, Participation in the Pension Plan, provide an extension of the one-time option for specified employees to remain in the existing benefit structure, providing for severability, the repeal of laws of conflict, codification, and an effective date.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor. Second.
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, ordinance, this is item D, ordinance number 2018-6, City Attorney.
Madam Mayor, ordinance number 2018-06 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 23 Land Development Regulations, Article 3 Zoning District, Section 23.3-6 Use Tables by prohibiting pharmacy, drugstore in the downtown DT and mixed-use East MUE zoning districts, and changing the categories and approvals for health clinics, urgent care facilities, medical offices, and outpatient clinics, medical offices by amending Section 23.4-13 medium and high-intensity conditional uses by creating standards for health clinics, urgent care facilities, medical offices, and outpatient clinics, medical offices. Providing for severability, the repeal of laws in conflict, codification, providing an effective date, and for other purposes.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor. Do I have a second?
Excuse me.
And I think, I'm sorry, you just wanted a presentation by William after the motion was on the floor.
I need the motion
Right,
first,
right.
please.
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. William, will you do your presentation, please?
For the record, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. As you may recall, at the last meeting, we discussed this, the original ordinance on our first reading. Several issues came up from the commission they wanted staff to address. So we've replaced that ordinance with a new one. That's the one before you tonight. In a summary, we have, at the request of Mr. Amoroso and a consensus from the board, removed pharmacies in the downtown zoning district. We've also created a series of conditional approval requirements for the urgent care that will be in downtown. Let me get up the snap first. And so, okay, while that's coming up, we'll show what the downtown is. And to avoid some questions about the legality of having special zoning within a zoning district itself, the city's land development regulations already have a precedent set that we do treat certain streets differently depending on where they're located within a mixed-use district. Mixed-use East does have a variety of different caveats between the various locations, so it was determined that we could legally identify Dixie Highway as being of a different character and nature than Lake and Lucerne in downtown. Hopefully this map will eventually appear on the screen up there. And
Is it in a folder that's showing up or no?
that is maximum. Yeah. Okay, we'll have to skip over that. Anyway, as many of you know, Dixie Highway is a little different than Lake and Lucerne downtown. The downtown zoning district runs from Gulfview onto the east, all the way to just west of the Dixie Highway. So we identified 11 properties that we felt were appropriate to have an urgent care or medical facility, and those are on Dixie Highway, do not have frontage on Lake and Lucerne. And that would cover the petitioner's request to have an urgent care facility in the downtown. In addition, we propose that the urgent care facilities be approved under a conditional land use, which is approved by the Planning and Zoning Board. There are no areas that are under consideration. I don't believe they're in a historic district, so they would not go before the Preservation Board. Those conditions are enumerated in the ordinance before you. I can go through those if you'd like, but basically it's determining the hours of operation, they not be a nuisance, is sufficient parking required. There are waivers if a urgent care happens right next to a residential zoning district, which could happen on Dixie Highway, because these conditional approval requirements will apply to all conditional uses associated with urgent care or medical facilities. So we provided a cover for all, or mechanism for all of the urgent care facilities in the city if they were to come, as well as other medical uses. Pull that up too. This is probably not going to come up either.
We need to get this up on the screen. We need to see this.
Yeah, I think you do.
We can just double check and see with our IT. Do we have any? Hold on one second.
Darius, can you hear us? Darian?
Thank you.
While we're waiting for him, I'll continue. Under the conditions of approval, we created a separate section in the development standards. We've enumerated where these types of uses can happen. So we're trying to get that up there.
Can I make a technical recommendation, City Manager, while we're waiting? Is it possible for us to get one computer system since everyone comes before and they have to provide their thing either on a jump drive or whatever it may be? Is it possible for us to obtain one computer or laptop system because we have these technical issues all the time? And this way, we're running one computer, we learn how to use that one computer, and we're always good, rather than have several different laptops, sometimes jiving and not
I
jiving?
believe that is the laptop that's dedicated to
It
the
is?
chambers.
Okay.
So that's not the issue. I think it's William's magnetic personality is affecting the equipment.
There it is. That's the-
Input,
He
output.
was going to say it probably. There you go. It's here, operator error. Apologize, Madam Mayor.
So what's up there now is section 15 of the conditional use requirement. And it goes through what has to be met in order to issue the conditional use by the Planning and Zoning Board. We've stipulated that these types of uses, and there's a variety of them, medical-related uses shall include medical offices, outpatient clinics, health clinics, and urgent care facilities. They have to front a major thoroughfare. The major thoroughfares in the city are a Lake and Lucerne, but they're excluded. Lake Worth Road, Dixie Highway, Federal Highway, portion of that is excluded, 10th Avenue North and 6th Avenue South. The hours of operation shall be anytime between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If the business owner would like to have a waiver to operate beyond those hours, that has to be requested from the appropriate board.
I'm sorry, well, where does this go, the locations go back to? I'm sorry.
The locations are these medical facilities can only be located if they front a major thoroughfare in the city, which is Dixie Highway, Lake Worth Road, Lake and Lucerne, but only a portion of Lake Lucerne would be allowed because we're excluding them from downtown on Lake and Lucerne, part of Federal Highway, 6th Avenue South, 10th Avenue North, in the appropriate zoning district. As I was saying, if a petitioner would like to have hours of operation beyond 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., they can request a waiver of the appropriate board, but in no circumstances could that waiver be granted if the property is located to a residential zoning district. Keep in mind that Dixie Highway is only, on the east side has lots that are only one lot deep, and then you have single family. So we would not want to approve or allow approving medical offices there that could operate 24 hours a day or something similar.
That's why I was asking, okay.
There has to be sufficient parking demonstrated to provide for the use. If it's in the downtown zoning, the uses may only be established if fronting Dixie Highway, and they cannot be established if they have frontages on Lake Avenue or Lucerne Avenue. That's where the 11 properties on Dixie Highway that meet those two criteria, including the one in question, would be allowed to go through this process. There's also a caveat about the business or the uses being expanded. If it's proposed to be expanded or increased in size, they would have to come back before the appropriate board to have their conditional use reviewed. And that is the extent of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, so, a few things. You said that, well, let's just look at the ordinance. Number 4 and 5, and some of the changes here, said that in the downtown zoning district, said uses may be established only if fronting Dixie Highway, right? Okay. Now, and no waiver or variance shall be granted for this requirement. Then number 5, it says said uses may not be established on properties that have frontages on either Lake or Lucerne. But then in your presentation, you said that you would allow frontages on Lake and Lucerne as long as it was not within the downtown.
There is a possibility, and we could make it more discreet if you wanted. You could apply for a variance to allow it on Lake and Lucerne, because if you read it that I've not allowed them, it can't happen in downtown, but part of Lake and Lucerne is in a different zoning district called Mixed Use East.
I guess my concern about that is that, you know, even though parts of Lake and Lucerne are zoned downtown and parts of Lake and Lucerne are zoned mixed use east, the future land use for all of Lake and Lucerne is downtown.
No.
It's not?
No.
Okay, so I guess what parts are downtown for the future land use and what parts are?
The future land use for downtown, I believe, Lake and Lucerne from Dixie Highway east to Gulfview. Then there's an area of Lake and Lucerne that is future land use as public, the City Hall. Okay. Part of it is TOD East, which is just west of City Hall. and includes the area around the railroad track.
Okay.
And then there's an area that's mixed use east, that's west of the railroad track.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, I was thinking east of Dixie Highway. I see what you're saying. Okay, all right, understood. Now, is there a way, I guess, that we could amend this just to say that no waiver or variance shall be granted, for this requirement for number 5 as well? So that it
We could
won't
add
be
that
allowed
statement for second reading, yes.
On any part of Lake Lucerne?
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
We could add that way, that same sentence from number 4, the second sentence.
Right.
Could be added to this as a second sentence in number 5 and wouldn't change the title and could be brought back on second reading like that.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And the reason why is, like in my mind, the downtown is pretty, thinking in the future, the downtown is.
Starts at the traffic circle.
Yeah.
Yes.
And goes to Gulfview. And so, I wouldn't want anything between Dixie Highway and I-95 that we would not allow east of Dixie Highway on Lake and Lucerne. So, that's, where I'm coming from, and I hope that I can get the support of my commissioners on that in the future. What would be the process for putting that in between first and second reading?
You make the motion as such. I approve the
literally right
ordinance
now?
on first reading, inclusive of the addition of that sentence on part 5.
When would we make that motion?
We would make it, once everyone has their words in, then we'll see if the originator of the motion would like to
Amend it.
amend their motion.
All right. Other
Commissioner
than that,
Marcel?
I'm on board.
Okay, just a couple quick questions. Again, I totally agree with this project. I think it needs to be where it goes. But you had talked about 11 pieces of property at the moment. Does that include future properties? For instance, the 1500 block of North Dixie, all that new development down there. Say somebody builds a new development. Can they put this into that new development?
The 11 properties are on Dixie Highway.
Okay. And it includes those big empty vacant lots that may or may not be developed?
I don't know of any large vacant lots that are on Dixie Highway in the downtown zoning district. It only goes from 1st Avenue South to 2nd Avenue North.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get on the record. It doesn't go that far.
No. But we keep in mind that mixed-use Dixie Highway, which does include those properties, allows pharmacies, medical offices, urgent care facilities, outpatient clinics already.
Okay, so that's my next question. So, outpatient treatment for sober home is already allowed on Dixie Highway?
Yes.
Okay. And medical marijuana is already allowed on Dixie Highway?
No, because we don't allow medical marijuana right now. We don't have an ordinance for that.
Okay. But if the ordinance, if the moratorium was lifted, I'm trying to be very clear here.
Right.
So if the moratorium's lifted, medical marijuana is allowed to go anywhere a CVS or Walgreens, anywhere a pharmacy.
In theory, yes.
So that would be anywhere on Dixie Highway.
If I could comment on that, Madam Mayor?
Please, City Attorney.
Unless the city passes an ordinance prohibiting medical marijuana. Then, in other words, once the moratorium ends, you'll have that choice. You can either prohibit it from this point forward, or you could allow it as the state allows it, subject to whatever they do in the session over the next few weeks.
Now, what you can do in addition to that is also provide distance separations between the uses that are associated with medical marijuana, and that would, in theory, could greatly limit the number of opportunities since we already have 2 on Dixie Highway. That's what the city of Wellington did.
Can you do the same thing for any of the medical uses? So you wouldn't have 2 MD Nows next door to each other, or you wouldn't have an entire brand new strip center of retail all taken up by medical, like you would a car
It would be
lot.
difficult unless you just said in a very broad way, no 2 medical related uses could be situated less than X amount of feet apart. But I think you would be severely limiting the opportunities downtown because there's such a broad range of uses that fall under medical.
Okay.
Limiting them to a distance separation could really be a disservice to the city.
Well, you get at what I'm trying. As we grow and as we develop Dixie Highway, we want to make sure that we are diverse in what we're looking at. I don't want all of a sudden, 2-3 block radius to become not anything but medical and they close at 5 o'clock. I'm trying to, think down the road on what the future looks like. And then you had mentioned parking. What are the rules for parking? Because again, as we grow down Dixie Highway, and especially on the east side where it butts up to neighborhoods, and we're not accommodating them with enough parking, they now are parking in and around in front of people's homes.
We did an economic incentive in the original LDRs that were adopted in 2013 that stipulated that if an existing building were not increased in size by more than 25%, whatever parking it had associated with it, even if it were none, that's the parking they had to have, even if it was a change of use and occupancy. That's why in this conditional approval of this type of use, we've asked any petitioner to demonstrate how are you going to meet the parking, which I believe for medical is there's one for each of practice.
Hi, Mark Stivers, Planning and Zoning. The current requirements for a medical office is 6 spaces for every doctor and 1 space for every staff person at that facility. So if you had 2 doctors and 4 staff, 6 staff, you'd have 6, 6, 12, plus 1 for each additional staff. That'd be 18 spaces.
And then how does it apply, because most of that land is vacant land, so it's going to be new development. How does it apply to new development?
If you propose new development with a medical office in it, you have to demonstrate you have enough sufficient parking for that use.
Okay, and it would be the same
Configuration.
Same configuration?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, I have a question for Mark. In the parking, I understand that there's some changes to the regulations that we have around parking that are coming forward to planning and zoning, I think this month. Have they come before planning and zoning, or
Not
was
yet.
there? Okay. Was the plan originally February? Was I wrong in that?
The plan was originally February, but as we keep looking at what we want to make sure we've included everything, we've added some pieces to it. Then the February meeting for planning and zoning and for the historic preservation were canceled, so we've now bumped it to March at best.
Okay. I would ask that we take a look at that. I mean, if you've got 2 doctors and 4 staff members and 6 spaces per doctor and 1 staff member per staff, you're basically mandating that a use like that have 2,500 square feet of parking, which is a lot of parking. It's a lot of real estate to use for parking. I would ask that we look carefully and at that and see what are other progressive cities doing around uses like that for parking? Because that's a lot, especially for Dixie Highway. That's a lot.
Sure, but keep in mind that in the core area, we do have a slightly different parking standard, which says you take all the uses, you add them up, you subtract 25% of the total required spaces. So you do get a reduction in the core area. And add to it, William said earlier that if it's an existing building, we don't make you add additional parking unless you expand the building by more than 25%. So in the core area, the parking isn't going to be as intense as you would outside that area.
And the core area is basically second to first, A to Gulfview.
A to Gulfview, yeah.
But Dixie Highway, South Federal Highway, that stuff, if it's not someone buying a building and rehabbing it and expanding it by less than 25%, the parking regulations would hit them in full.
Correct.
And that would seem to not be the best thing for development and investment in the city. I would just ask that we take a look and see, what are, the cities that have the best records on this issue, that are at the forefront of it. I would just ask that we take a look and see what it is that they're doing. Has Armageddon occurred in these cities, where the parking regulations are not so onerous? And if there's no evidence that Armageddon is going to occur, then maybe we should pursue an evidence-based approach.
Can we go back to the item on the agenda, guys? You're flying away on parking, and we can have that on another agenda item. I appreciate it. But back to the original, I just want to state for that purpose, we had a conversation here, and there was an addition made that seemed to be agreed on between Commissioners Hardy, myself, and Commissioner Amoroso, looking for consensus on it in reference to amending the motion to include west of Dixie Highway in reference to Lake and Lucerne. So is anyone interested in amending their motion to make sure that that is included?
Would be happy to amend my motion.
Vice Mayor amends the motion. So your amended motion is the inclusion of Lake and
West side.
Lucerne, west side of
The
Dixie.
exclusion of the second sentence, no waiver or variance shall be granted for this requirement will be added as a second sentence as to part 5.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that motion is made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our electric utility. Where is Mr. Liberty?
You can go ahead. We've got this covered.
All right, under the consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion.
Seconded.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Is that it?
That's it.
That's it? Then I'll, city attorney? No, city attorney.
Don't jump the gun.
There's not anything to move, Vice Mayor. Hold on.
Yes, there is.
City attorney, do you have a
Nothing
report?
new,
No?
just,
How about you, city manager?
Good luck bluffing.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at home.
Who seconded it?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by Herman. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.